Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Alan Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 107, Introduction to 3D Printing, in our weekly Zoom classroom meeting. All right, we'll use the same link each week to run these Zoom meetings at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Attendance is not required, but it's a good way to get questions answered and to review the assignments for the week. We've released lab number 2. Lab number 2 is this sign. It's a do not disturb sign. And the objectives are to model the sign using CAD. You can use either AutoCAD or SolidWorks or any other CAD software that allows you to export as a stereolithography file, an STL. And we're going to continue to focus on CAD. And then as we progress in the course, we'll start going through things like how to use the Dremel slicer, the DigiSlicer. So you do want to get the student software, you want to get your CAD software up and running, and you want to take a look at the assignments. We've modeled the assignment with both AutoCAD and with SolidWorks and have videos for those. And so if you click on the lab number 2 with AutoCAD, and I'm going to turn off my webcam. It goes through how to model our sign. Step by step, we take you through the dimensions, show you how to use the CAD software. And create the drawings. Now, when you use text in AutoCAD, you have to use the bonus tools to be able to convert the text into vector-based geometry. And that means that if I write my name on it like this, that's text. But when I use the bonus tools and I explode the text and create geometry from it under the Express tools here, and I usually like to use the menu bar, so I'm going to show that. But under the Express tools, they have these text tools. And one of the tools you'll need to use is this explode text tools like I'm showing in the video. When you explode the text, you then convert it to look like this. And so here I am exploding it. And now it's vector-based, which means I can use 3D modeling techniques on it. You have to remember AutoCAD is an older program. It doesn't do everything as automatically as SolidWorks. And so here I've exploded the text and then I've extruded it. And then we've created the part model. And then what we do is we save it as an STL file. We save it as a drawing file and as an STL file. And then we export it and bring it into the slicing software. All right. Let's take a look at our outline of topics. Outline of topics is located under contents. And here it is, sequence of topics. You can just click on it. I've already opened it. And so just to save a minute, we're working on project number 2. Notice that these are in green. So we're working with these green, meaning they're hands-on labs. Last week, we went over modeling the COVID shield, or actually just printing it. If we take a look at the camera work here, I'm going to start my camera, stop my share. Al, is that large on the screen?
Now it is, yes.
Great. So we started off with.
It's off now.
Can you see it still?
Now you can see your hand and everything else working fine.
Okay.
It
Just
keeps on
wanted
going
to know.
on and off. Keeps on going on and off, Joe.
So my computer is, or my webcam is not staying on?
That's correct. Now it's on. Now it's off.
Okay. So it's an issue. I'll just do what I can. So here's the first project. Okay. You're to open this up in CAD and just basically convert it to an STL and then bring it into the slicing software. You don't have to do any of the design work. And the same with this part right here. This is a part, it's used to open doors and be able to things like that. The other thing we recommend as you get into the class is getting one of these Veneer gauges or a micrometer, a caliper. with both inches and millimeters. And that'll give you the ability to go through and take measurements and then to be able to convert those measurements to work with CAD. Another thing we recommend is these files, and you can use nail files as well, and a set of clippers. And those would be used to deburr the parts. And so as we start to create the parts like this, this is a dual extruded frog. You can see it's kind of a tree frog, but it's got the build plate adhesion, so it sticks to the plate. And then when we start taking them off, what we'll do is we'll start going through, and you have to process the 3D print and clean it up basically, so that you can then have a finished product. So some of these tools will come in quite handy for you, and we recommend those as you progress down the course. And some glue. All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing. So we're currently working on project number 2. I've reviewed project number 1. Put project number 1 into the Dropbox and we'll print those. And what I've done is I've ordered some bins that I'm going to have available in room P130. And so students can pick up their parts from room P130. I'm going to have a bin with your last name and first initial on it. And that way you can come out and get your parts. All right, so that's lab 2. Let's go back here to the sequence of topics and let's take a look at some of our other work. The textbook readings, we're reading the 3D printer hardware and software textbook. And so as we go through and we read that, the first chapter goes through and talks to you a little bit about why using a 3D printer versus a laser cutter and some of these other types of technology equipments. We go through some additive manufacturing, and essentially what we want to do is we want to tie the theory to the hands-on applications. Things like the history of robotic 3D printing came about in the 80s, and it was developed by a person over at MIT. Essentially, as we look at these projects, what we find is how they were developed, and we want the students to have an understanding of that. So the textbook does a good job of that, and we will go through and tie in that reading material as we continue to work on the course. The other textbook that we're using is the 20 projects book. And this is what really kind of runs the course. We really have it sort of as a hands-on project book with CAD, so you can model the parts and then create them on the 3D printer. Has a number of projects, and as we look at them, some of them I didn't feel were appropriate for the first project because they require quite a bit of use of CAD. And so the first couple of projects we felt were not really the best ones to start with, but you're welcome to do any of the projects that are in the textbook as bonus in 3D print those. And so as you look at the way the projects are laid out, and we look at the project for our do not disturb sign, and we'll do a lot of these, like this tape dispenser works out very nicely. The author had a thing for desk items, stationery holders, boxes. And we'll learn a lot of excellent techniques as we go through working with different materials like semi-transparent materials. Here's our do not disturb sign. And so as we go through, you can change the text on here if you want it to say, Joe's room videotaping in progress or something like that. That's kind of what we did for my sign here. Video meeting in progress, do not disturb. So I can put it on the door, and then when I don't answer the door, hopefully don't keep knocking. As we go through and we look at what the textbook looks like, what the author does is he estimates the print time and the layer heights, and he says what kind of printer he's using. He's using an UP 3D printer. We're going to be using the Dremel 3D printers, and so as we start to work with the course, we'll be using these printers right here. I'll switch over to my cam number 3. And we'll take you through the techniques for putting in the materials and taking out the components. And so as we take a look at a Dremel 3D printer, and let me know if my video is okay. Some examples of some of the projects that we have done. I have this one in here from last semester. This is a ring assignment. You can see that the parts are adhered to the build plate. We did a technique where you pause the printing and then switch the colors. And so we were able to do a pause. And notice what this is here in the middle. This is what's called infill, because the printers, as they print with this nozzle, cannot just extrude things in the air. And so you have to have support material, because additive manufacturing builds these layer by layer as the parts build up. All right, so in wrapping things up for our short 10-minute Zoom classroom meeting, back to our main splash page. Students are to work on lab number 2. It's a sign. You can have it say whatever you want, is provided that it's appropriate. And you're to model that sign using CAD, AutoCAD, or SolidWorks, export it as an STL file. And then we'll import that STL file into the DigiSlicer, and we'll look at slicing next week. So as you start to work with the course, you're going to need a CAD software. You can use AutoCAD or SolidWorks, and you're going to need to go through the textbook material in the 3D printing projects book and the Mastering 3D printing textbook. Once you've completed your CAD model, you will take the model, save it as an STL, and then you will, and it's under the export. We'd say export it as other formats. And what we would do is we would export that as an STL file. This part isn't modeled yet, so I really can't export it. It won't be a 3D part. But if I were to export it, I'd be able to export it, and then I'd be able to go into my slicing software and to be able to import that. I can just take a different file. There's one from last week where we were importing that. And then once we have imported it, we want to go through some of the slicing, and we'll start to talk about that next week. All right. Turn in the assignments to the assignment folder right here. If I switch over to a student view, you can see how the assignments will be graded. And so I can go to the chapter 1, module 1. Here's our rubric. We're going to grade you on completeness, accuracy, proper design rules. Have you followed the proper instructions? Is it the proper size, properly dimensioned? And then are you using the CAD features as we have brought them in?
And
You'll take.
Sorry about that. And making sure you save and export the drawing itself, DWG extension.
Right, we want both of the files. We want the STL and the DWG file. And so you'll add those files here, and then you'll submit it, and you'll get a flag that tells you that you've submitted. So if I go and I add a flag, if I add a file, and let's just go to my desktop. As you can see, I have a number of different projects. Let's just take this one and open it. Once it's in, we can add it. And then if we want to, we can go and add some information here about the file.
And also, by the way, Joe, you want to explain to them that we use this 2 different ways?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about it last week, but if you don't have a complete file, you can always ask to look at it. So you can, you could. You could always ask for assistance, and we won't grade it. Right, Hal?
That is perfectly correct.
And then once it's submitted, you'll get a notification that says that it's been submitted. Mine, I think it'll show me once I go back to being an instructor. All right, so that completes our 10-minute Zoom meeting. We're going to stop this recording and then open things up and talk about technique. Any other things that I need to cover, Al?
No, that's all. I think we covered perfectly. You did a great job.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll open things up for questions.